Hi, this is Miss Andrea, and I want to pick up our homeschool story time by talking about more about our first year of homeschooling. Our first year of homeschooling pretty much kind of was a combination of trying to find the rhythm and a lot of pushback from everyone around us. So basically, we were trying to settle into homeschooling, and everyone was questioning our sanity. Um, Settling into homeschooling, I did something that I don't know if many people do, but I had been reading about sleep patterns, and I knew that my kids didn't like to wake up in the morning. My daughter especially, she had night terrors, um, and had trouble falling asleep. So in the morning, she didn't like to wake up. And what I would do is I wouldn't wake her up. I would watch the clock to see when she was going to get up. Um, and I probably did this. I did this the entire summer before we started homeschooling because I kind of wanted to know what our rhythm was going to be when we did officially start in the fall. Um, and I tell you what, she slept all day. Um, that first month or so, and I guess that's part of the decompression period. She knew school was over. She was able to breathe. She was able to relax, and she was able to sleep. So I would just get up, do my journals, get myself together, um, get myself something to eat, have food ready for when the kids got up. At that time, it usually consisted of bacon, pancakes, or cereal, um, apples, because she was a grazer. But I tried to, if she wasn't up by 10 or 11, I would cook some bacon because I knew that smell would get her to open her little eye. So I wouldn't let it go all day. But I just wanted to see when she would go to sleep naturally and when she would wake up naturally. And her personal rhythm was kind of 12 to 12, if left alone and not bothered. And of course, there was variations, being someone who was pretty much born with insomnia. And yeah. So one time in particular, during the first year of homeschooling, they had the online homeschool program, Time for Learning, that was pretty easy to use. And my husband just heard clicking, click, click, clicking. And he went downstairs. And he goes into his, well, what the office room, which was the homeschool room at the time. And she's sitting there. I think he said it was 2 or 3 in the morning. And she's sitting there, face inches from the computer. And she's just feverishly typing and doing, work. And he says to her, "Sweetie, it's the middle of the night. Why are you up? Why are you on the computer?" And she was just like, "Daddy, I just have to get my work done. I have to get my work done." And she, I think what she was doing at that point was just trying to prove that homeschooling was going to work. She was so afraid of it not working, that she'd be on the computer in the middle of the night. If she woke up, she'd go downstairs and she'd do a couple of lessons. And we didn't stop her. And if she slept in the next morning, she slept in. So that was part of our settling in, is me just watching them and figuring out what their personal sleep and wake rhythms were. And for that first year, I really let it go. I really did. Um, I got up at 8. They were up by noon, 4 hours of homeschooling. Um, I made all of our appointments for a late morning. So if we did have to get out the house, it wasn't too early. or early afternoon. I think piano lessons were at 4. Um, Taekwondo was in the evening. We did have some midday Taekwondo the second year. But the first year, we just kept those evening classes to the evening, and I just watched their sleep patterns and let them settle in to their own personal rhythms. Um, we spent a lot of time together. Uh, we played a lot of Scrabble. She was always like, I can't spell, I can't spell. And so she's a very competitive person, so I just broke out the Scrabble game. She had to spell right to beat me. And I didn't go down easy. And Scrabble is my favorite thing. And I don't know where my phone is, but the ringer is off and it keeps buzzing. Um, eh. um, she had to play well and she had to spell right to beat me, and that improved the spelling. Um, on rainy days, we did a thing that I called History in Bed, and we had a huge King Fisher encyclopedia, and I'm looking behind me to see if I have it. Nope, I gave it away. It was the King Fisher Encyclopedia of History, and on rainy days, we just get in bed and just read. And we were reading from the beginning to the end, and we leave a bookmark where we left off when we got tired. We'd take a nap, when we got tired of reading, and then we'd get up and start cooking dinner or whatever. And that was really a huge part of us rebuilding our relationships. Because, you have relationships with your kids, you do. But, you know how the last day of school, or right before the first day of school, parents are with their kids and they just look like, and they're in the grocery store and you're like, hey, they're a little bit of handful. And they're like, oh, school starts up in a few days, or, oh, they're home from school. And I just never want to be that person. So I spent the time, and I didn't have the luxury to be that person because I was homeschooling. So I spent the time having fun with them and letting them have fun with me, so that we would never get to that point where we were just sick and tired of each other and we were ready for them to go. And I think we did a good job with that. We did a lot of field trips. We did anything scientific came through town, like bodies. We did bodies a lot. We learned more at Bodies the exhibition in 2 days than we learned in an entire textbook. We went when the Titanic came through. We went through there. We just we went to, I can't remember. We went to every science place we could. Went to every history exhibit we could. I wasn't really into big field trips. We did do the big Six Flags has a homeschool day at the end of every school year, and we did that also. But we sought out homeschool groups. We did homeschool play dates. We did homeschool roller skating. We did homeschool book fairs. And we just explored ourselves, each other, the homeschool community. We did. I said I was going to talk about pushback, wasn't I? It was just ridiculous. It's like there were people related to us who just never asked how my kids were. They just assumed my kids were fine, I guess. They just, from my perspective, they just didn't seem that interested. But the second I started homeschooling, I get phone calls. How are the kids doing? How are the kids doing? How are the kids doing? And I knew they were just searching for me to say something negative so they could come down on me for homeschooling. And I did not. I zipped my lip. And I think I learned that through just reading, is that if you're feeling down, if you're having a down day homeschooling, tell it to another homeschooler. Don't tell it to your family, especially not in those first couple of years where you're just really on shaky ground and unsure of yourself, because those people close to you will take the opportunity to literally make you cry and make you feel like garbage trash, for homeschooling. So there was pushback by family members. I had one area where I was expecting pushback, so I built it just this fear in my heart. I was convinced my older brother who passed away, I was convinced that he was gonna like call Department of Social Services on me. Like I was that terrified to tell him I was homeschooling. So it took several months into that homeschooling year, because we didn't live near each other, for me to tell him we were homeschooling. I think we had gone to see him in the spring, and of course, it was after spring break. I wasn't going during spring break. I didn't have to go during spring break. So he was like, the kid's schedule is kind of weird. And I was like, oh, by the way, we homeschool. And he surprised me. He said, well, you've always been a little crazy and unpredictable with the way you've run your life. And I haven't seen it go bad, so it'll go well. And so I was afraid of his reaction for no reason, but people who I thought were going to be supportive, a cousin who I just really thought would get it, just really hurt my feelings and said, I can't wait until that homeschool mess is illegal, and I was just like so taken back. She was at my house and she saw my kids and she saw that they were well, but she was just convinced that what I was doing was a danger to my kids, and she was very verbal about it. And I think it was the people closest to me that had those reactions that hurt me the most. My hairdresser made me so mad I stopped going to her. And it's a good thing, because I didn't realize at the time that she was making my hair fall out. And I didn't realize till after I stopped going to her and took the weave out. Because when I started going to her, I didn't need a weave. And then she started saying, well, let's add a little here for some extra weight. And when I finally stopped going to her and got all the weaves and stuff out of my hair, I just realized that my hair didn't do the things that it used to do. So that was a blessing in disguise. But as I was saying, I was talking to her. She was talking to me about her kids and how they weren't listening at all and how she was having such a hard time with them and the whole deal. And, I was talking more specifically about what my daughter had been going through and how school wasn't going well and why I felt the need to homeschool. She said, what you need to do is spank her. Whenever someone said that to me, my reaction has always been to spank that person. Didn't think I could take her down, so just, kind of kept that to myself and let it go. Pushback at the grocery store. Like, for example, school was going to start in a few days, and there were kids everywhere climbing the cash registers, climbing their parents, climbing the grocery aisles. And, my kids were doing their thing. They're being a little antsy because there were kids all around them, just like on full vibrate mode. And she says to me, won't you be glad when the kids get back in school? And I looked at her and I'm like, well, no, Jordan said, she goes, I don't go to school. And I loved it when she piped up, because she'd say that in the most ridiculous way. She'd say, I don't go to school. I homeschool. And then they would say, well, what do you do all day? And she'd say, I watch TV and play video games. And I'd be like, oh my gosh. And I'd be like, but the video games are actually learning games, and the TV things are, Animal Planet and History Channel. She'd already killed it. Eventually, I just learned to smile and nod, But in the early days, when she'd be like, I don't go to school and I watch TV and play video games. And I guess we should talk about that. Why don't we talk about that next time? I'm going to write it down. Video games education. That first year, a lot of the curriculums that we did were more fun than anything, and I really had this idea that I could teach them without them knowing they were being taught. So anyway, so that's kind of how our first year went. At the end of the year, I printed, we had CD-ROMs back then. The CD-ROMs would give you a printout of the things your child had mastered in math and reading. I think I had Math Blaster and Reading Blaster and Clue Finders and in the Time for Learning thing. And it would just give you a printout of everything the child had mastered. And I just took all those printouts and organized them and put them in the binder, and we were good to go. We were good to go. And I don't remember taking the summer off. I don't think we ever really took a summer off. We would read. We would do at least a math worksheet every day, and then, when it was time to wind down, they would get handed a book to read. So that's kind of a story time, to tell you about how the first year of homeschooling, actually went. It was a really fun experiment in getting to know your own children who you'd already had around for many years, and learning to create barriers and boundaries around people who weren't going to be supportive. So until next time.